Hey, and welcome back to another Let's Talk About Movies We Own. If you notice the runtime, we are doing it a bit differently. So, with the last video being 2.5, almost 3 hours long, those take a long time to edit, even if it's just us talking and then the video is just posters of movies we have. So, what we're going to start doing, because with these genres we're going to get into, they are going to be very long, very extensive collections here. So we're going to start doing it with, they're just going to be in parts. So this is going to be Let's Talk About Movies We Own, Comedy Movies Part 1. And we're going to do these for about 30 minutes. We'll still do them once a month, and they'll be at the end of each month. But hopefully that means it's a bit less work intensive on me. But we're still going to talk about the movies here. So, comedies. So the first one that we're going to talk about is 17 Again. I haven't seen this movie like at all. I've seen trailers, so I know what it's about. It's the Zac Efron movie, right?
It is a Zac Efron movie. It's cute. It is cute. But it's also really cringy, mid to late 2000s kind of humor where a good bit of it is a little too sexualized for the age range.
Yeah.
There's a weird storyline for the daughter the whole way through the movie. It's a little much. But a lot of the actual jokes are still pretty funny. And Leslie Mann is still... It's Leslie Mann. She's hilarious in pretty much anything she's in. Zac Efron's charming like always. Matthew Perry was pretty good in it. It's not one of my favorites for him.
Was this Zach's first movie after...
High School Musical? I think so.
Okay.
Because this is kind of like a weird movie for him. It's not his best work. And then he only got better from there.
Right. I'm about to say, I've seen him in some comedies now. He's got good jobs.
He's got really good timing.
He does.
And that does show in this. He's got good timing in this. It's just the material he was given wasn't the best. But he makes the movie watchable.
Fair enough. And then next ones is, we got both 21 and 22 Jump Street. I have seen both. We saw 22 Jump Street in theaters. We rented 21 Jump Street for me just so I could get caught up on it before we went to the theaters to see the sequel. I honestly, the first one's fine. It's got some funny setups and stuff, but I feel like the second one is funnier and is the better out of the two films. They're just so much as in plot and character development, and like the first one is just kind of the old let's make a joke about everything that was made serious in the show, whereas the second one just kind of basically just doing their own thing. The characters are in their groove, they know what their character is about, and we get probably some of the funniest scenes. We can't say the scenes because of YouTube and the use of the F word, but if you've seen 22 Jump Street, you know what scene I'm talking about.
So with the first movie, my issue with it, I do enjoy both of them. I do find them both hilarious. For Channing Tatum and Jonah Hill and Ice Cube, they're great the whole way through in both movies. My issue with the first one is you can tell who was writing the teenagers didn't know how to write teens. Because we were fresh out of high school when the first one came out. And not a single one of those kids acted like anyone I went to school with. And I mean, we graduated the previous summer that movie came out. So there was not that big of a gap between the kids we graduated with and the kids that should have been portrayed in that movie. The second one, though, has the most quotable lines.
Does.
You can't say them on YouTube.
No.
But they're so funny. We will still quote those lines back to each other sometimes. Yeah. It's a lot of fun. I will say the first one is what made me want to see Channing Tatum do more.
And he has done more. And we have more of his films
too.
And this, so yeah, his name will come up at least times. Once more, I think.
Well, there's twice here, and I think we have at least one more of his movies.
We'll see. All right, so the next is the Abbott and Costello Monster Collection. It was 4 films. It was Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, Abbott and Costello meet the Invisible Man, Abbott and Costello meet the Mummy, and Abbott and Costello meet Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I bought that collection because I enjoy 3 out of those 4 films. I did watch Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It's a little too slapstick for me. I know Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde was, I guess, one of the Universal monsters at the time that they were also just kind of using for it, but it doesn't work as well as, like, especially with Frankenstein. Probably is the best one out of the 4 in that collection, mainly is because you don't just get Frankenstein, you get Dracula, you get the Wolfman, and then at the end it like has a little kind of teaser for the next movie of the kind of like how Marvel does with introducing a character you'll see in the next film. So at the end of it, it's the beginning of the Invisible Man, even though that's not how they meet the Invisible Man. There's no continued see with any of the films. So they're all their own separate thing. They're not all in the same universe. So it's kind of just almost like a Marvel type of comedy movie for that film. And then personal favorite of mine is going to be Invisible Man, just because I like, out of all the Universal monsters, he's probably my favorite, especially the original 1950s iteration of him. And it works just as well with him mean Abbott Costello, and it kind of is very interesting. They don't play like it's just Abbott and Costello just being thrown into the horror movies and their reactions. They're still technically, for that time, horror movies. Like the Frankenstein and Dracula and Invisible Man aren't goofy or comedical. They're still their sinister selves. It's just now they're working off of Abbott and Costello's comedy and timing. If you like their type of comedy, I think you'll really get into those. And then the Mummy is just kind of thrown in there. I mean, it gets again, it's a good one. It's just I've never been a big fan of the Mummy in general throughout all the iterations of it. I mean, like, Brendan Fraser is probably the closest that I've been interested into that. And then again, I'm not really interested in the Mummy story. I'm just interested of more the Indiana Jones style Brendan Fraser stuff, but that's beside the point. Going back to Abbott Costello, it's definitely a great collection. I just think, and I think it was like $10. So definitely, it's a good introduction to Abbott Costello as well if you're not used to their type of comedy there. You've seen them, I've shown them all to you, but you don't recall them, and that's not really your comedy style anyways, which I totally get. It's getting close to like 80-90 years there ish in regards to comedy, so it's not going to be everybody's style as opposed to something like Charlie Chaplin or the Marx Brothers style. So
yeah, see, Abbott Costello has never been something that I've been super into. I very barely remember some of Frankenstein, and at first I thought the one I was describing was the Mummy, and then you had to correct me on that.
Right. Yeah, you remember the mainly the first full act of between the movie opening up till they actually meet Frankenstein and Dracula for the first time.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that, and then I believe I fell asleep, and then I stayed asleep.
I don't think you fell asleep. You did fall asleep during one of them, but it wasn't that one. Alright, so next one is Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. Full disclosure, I'm not the biggest fan of his first film. I actually like When Nature Calls better. This one, it's just more of, I guess, Jim Carrey, and then by reacting off of him. But he does do his comedy style. But the second one is where he actually gets to kind of almost grow as a character and actually be doing the actual detective work on a larger scale and just higher, I guess not higher stakes, but just higher, not comedy as in like high comedy. It's very lowbrow for both films, but it's a more interesting, more funny film. But as far as the Pet Detective movie. It's fine. It does have some plot lines that have not aged well at all. But if you're watching it with that mindset that this was a movie made in the 90s, it's fine. It's fine. I know you're more of a fan of this one.
I am. I do agree that the majority of the movie has not aged well. So you have to watch it not through the lens of 2024. You have to watch it through a 90s lens to fully enjoy it. I think part of the reason that we watched it so much growing up is it's a very football-heavy plot.
It is.
And
which is probably another reason why I don't really get into it.
You're not a football fan at all.
Yeah.
But football was almost a religion in my household. It took over our entire lives from July through December every year. Yeah, it's a guilty pleasure movie for me. I really do enjoy a good bit of it. And there are a few lines that I will still quote to this day. None of them are really appropriate. But yeah, it was just a fun movie we watched a lot growing up.
Yeah. All right. The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes' Smarter Brother is probably one of the most underrated Gene Wilder comedies ever. So, like, when you think of Gene Wilder, you're of course going to think of, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, or you're going to think of Blazing Saddles or Young Frankenstein, where, man, okay, so if I'm going to eventually do, like, a whole review on this movie for the classic movie series. It's going to be a while before I get to it, but it is on my list to do a full in-depth review of. But I'm just going to preface it this way. If you like Young Frankenstein, you're really going to like this movie, because it's basically almost the entire cast of Young Frankenstein minus the grandpa from Everybody Loves Raymond. And but everybody else, I can't remember their names off the top. Igor's in it, and the assistant, the female assistant, is in it, and I think Madeline Kahn is in it.
I think she is, because I remember.
Yeah,
she's the actress.
That's right. So they're all in this, but instead of taking place and riffing on the Frankenstein, it's taking place during the time and riffing on the Sherlock Holmes style. So it is they still do a whole Sherlock Holmes style case, and I believe the villain is even Dr. Moriarty, but with the comedy style. It's not by Mel Brooks. This is actually Gene Wilder's doing. This was his his directorial debut, and he also wrote this. I think he was writing this during Young Frankenstein. Possibly Mel probably did help with some of the writing. He just goes uncredited. Who knows? But you can definitely, if it's the same type of humor. So if you enjoyed Mel Brooks's movies, this almost seems like it would fit just right in with that collection. So definitely check it out. I watched this in high school for the first time just because it was on Turner Classic Movies. And I was like halfway through the film, and some of my friends came over, and they started watching it at the weirdest time.
I know what scene you're talking about.
And they're just like, Ben, what are you watching? And I'm just like, it's hard to explain. You'd have to see it from the beginning to understand why this scene is the way it is. But then when I found out that, most people have not seen this movie, so I was not really surprised when you had not seen it. But the way I said it was like, well, it's Young Frankenstein, but with Sherlock Holmes. And you're like, okay, I'm down. And then, yeah, by the way, it's got a musical number in it, just like Young Frankenstein. And you're like, what? I think that is when it won you over, because beforehand, you were like, okay. But then that happened, and I'll let you explain it.
So, before the scene you're talking about, the movie was a little too slow.
Mm-hmm.
And it did have some feel for Young Frankenstein up to that point, but it wasn't really kind of giving me the feel I was looking for until the bunny hop scene. After the bunny hop scene, the movie takes off, and it runs with it, and you get the kind of joy from watching it that you're wanting to get, because that's by that point everyone's been introduced, you're having fun with it, everyone, you can tell everyone on screen is having fun with it, and it doesn't feel like they're just kind of drugging through it. Like the first half of the movie kind of feels like they're just kind of pushing through.
I would say the first like 15 minutes. Bunny Hop is pretty early into the film.
That's right. It is pretty early.
And it's just kind of like Young Frankenstein, where for a while, outside, okay, there's a good couple jokes in the first 10 minutes or so, but then it really doesn't take off until he gets to Transylvania. Yeah. It's pretty much the same thing here. It doesn't really take off until the case starts.
My thing with this one, though, is whereas Young Frankenstein had a couple jokes in the front that can kind of get you engaged, this one didn't really have those first few jokes to really get you engaged until you hit the bunny hop scene. Then you hit the bunny hop scene, and the movie takes off, and it's a really fun ride after that. I will say I prefer Young Frankenstein over this.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not by, like, a wide margin.
Right, yeah. No, I agree. You want to start with the next one?
I will. The next one is Austin Powers Spy Who Shagged Me. It's my favorite one of the trilogy. It has all of the major moments you think of when you think of Austin Powers. It's got Mini-Me. It's got the Zip-It scene. It's got them stealing his mojo. It's got as many raunchy jokes as the other two as well. But I feel like they land a little better in this one because he's playing off everybody a little bit better. Because the third one has Beyonce, and you don't really play well off of Beyonce. And the first one, even though I love Elizabeth Hurley, it doesn't mesh all that well because she's still trying to be a little proper.
Well, this is more about the second one, so I won't say anything, but I do prefer the first one. This one is fine, but yeah, it does introduce all the characters that we would then get for, like, Fat Bastard and Mini-Me and some of the others. But yeah, I prefer the first one. To be fair, I grew up with the first one. I saw the other two as they came out, or we rented them. But it's just, I don't know. The first one holds a special place in my heart, whereas the other sequels, I just kind of see them as sequels. So yeah, I don't really have much to say on it, but I mean, it's fine to watch them in all one sitting, but if I had to choose, I'd choose the first one.
And see, I could see where you're coming from, with the first one being the one that you watched more often. For us, it was the second one.
Right.
We
So
watched
it's more
that
of a
one more
nostalgia.
often. It is. I still love it.
Probably in general, none of these movies aged really well at all.
No, not at all.
Outside of Austin being as much as he's supposed to be like a sex god, he's very good at consent.
I know. That's one of the shocking things in it, is he's insistent on consent. Where
he is.
On a time where that really wasn't a thing in movies.
Right.
The next one is All You.
Yeah, and this one's not. I mean, I would guess it would be a dramedy, because it's not like a ha-ha. I mean, there is funny scenes in it, especially whenever the duck is on scene. But Babe is just a really nice, calm, slowish movie. Again, is more nostalgic because I did grow up with this. This was like one of the first VHSs I remember us buying and owning, and asking to watch it pretty much every single day. And I know you don't really like it because you don't really like talking animals?
I don't like live action talking animals.
Okay.
It's weird for me. I don't like it. The story's too slow for me. It's not really all that funny for me. It doesn't really do much for me. I don't like it. Just put that little meme of Chris Evans right here. I don't like it.
Next one, this is more of a you film.
It is. So I really enjoy Tina Fey and Amy Poehler in just about anything.
Oh yeah.
And Baby Mama's no exception. I enjoy their performances. It's what makes the movie enjoyable for me. My only note for it is it's one of the few movies I really don't like Steve Martin in. It's one of the few Steve Martin movies I don't like him.
Steve, he was in. He's the boss.
He's
right?
the boss.
Yeah, that's right. He plays a jerk really well.
He does.
I mean, he
played the jerk.
The jerk. So yeah, I agree. I like these two characters, and I like the plot. I don't know. I feel like it was like ahead of its time, but not ahead of its time writing wise, to where it's just kind of one of those films that you find at like the dollar store, $5 store, and you're like, or nowadays it'd be like it's on Netflix, and you're like, well, I might as well watch it because I like other stuff from Tina Fey and Amy Poehler. Whereas I think after this, they both were in like better films.
They were, but this was kind of like one of the first ones where I saw them working together,
I think this
not
was-
on SNL.
Right. I was about to say. I think this is either during their time at SNL or like right after their time at SNL. There, because I remember this trailer a lot. Like it was on television all the time.
This movie played on FX like every other day
Right.
for about a year.
I never watched it until we bought the DVD. So yeah, it is fine. I do enjoy the plot. I just the comedy doesn't fit my style.
This next one you really don't like.
No, and I'm just not a big fan of rom-coms in general, as you'll see as we get to some of the other movies here. So
I've noticed for a rom-com to really capture you, it has to be an adaptation of something else.
it really does, and that's probably because I read the adaptation. And I'm like, well, I want to see it on the screen. This and this might just be because of. I mean, I guess maybe the plot was new when it came out, but I feel like this plot of The Bachelor, where he has won a lot of money, but he can't actually have it until he's married.
It's not that he won it.
Or
He inherited it from his grandfather.
It just feels like a rom-com version of Brewster's Million
I can see that.
to a degree, and I'm like, well. But I just don't like rom-coms in general, unless, as you said, they're adaptations. This is also when they're really trying to get, I don't remember his name. It's Robin from Batman and Robin. They're trying to get him to be the next kind of, I guess Leonardo or whoever, that everybody swooned over, and it's not very charismatic as a person and an actor in general. It's kind of
Yeah.
why he stopped or he wasn't being picked up for projects a little bit after
And
this.
also, for the non-Batman fans, the people who are more into stuff like Grays, it's McVet.
Yeah.
Because you never know. There could be something out there that are just like, I didn't watch the Batman movies. Because I know several people who are just like, I didn't watch the Tim Burton Batman movies or anything related to it.
Well, this wasn't Tim Burton. This was
Or anything related to it.
this was somebody else. But yeah, it's none of it really works well comedy wise. For me, it's definitely a time capsule of sorts for rom-coms, which is weird because there's rom-com movies from that era that
That
age
you
a lot
really
better.
love.
That we'll get when we get to that section.
I do enjoy this
And
one.
honestly, this probably should be, but I guess it's more of a comedy film, and the rom-com it just kind of takes a back seat.
Yeah, like when we were deciding what counted in the comedy section versus the romance section for a rom-com, is what was it more prevalent? Was it more joke heavy or was it more relationship heavy? And this was definitely more joke heavy. Even though the jokes don't really land for a lot of people. For others of us, they do. Like me. I grew up with this movie. My mom and I watched it way too many times. I could quote it from start to finish at one point in my life. I also really enjoy the pastor or the priest character. He was really sweet all the way through. It's one of the few Renee Zellweger movies that I actually really enjoy. It's like this, Jerry Maguire, and Chicago. That's it. Pretty much anything else she's in, I pass on. This also is another movie that I think proves my point of the worse the movie, the better the soundtrack. Because this has a nice version of Don't Fence Me, and I believe it's the Sinatra version. And it's the first time I heard the song the first time ever I saw Your Face. And it's a really pretty moment in that movie. So I think it goes back to my theory of the worse the movie, the better the soundtrack.
Fair enough. All right, Barbie. So I really enjoy this film now, but that is also recency bias because it just came out last summer. So I don't know what my thoughts are going to be 5-10 years down the line. But as of right now, I really enjoyed this movie. As I said, it's recency bias thing because it just came out, not even a full 12 months ago. So, it's a good film.
So I love this movie. I loved every second of this movie.
It was more aimed towards you.
It
of
was
course.
really aimed towards me. So this movie made me cry on 3 separate occasions, and only one of them was from laughing. So I did cry from laughing at the scene where they're all singing the Rob Thomas song.
Mm-hmm.
I was cracking up so hard watching that scene that I was in tears. But also you have America Ferrera's speech that she gives, her monologue that she gives towards the end of the movie, hit way too close to home. And I'm sure it hit way too close to home for a lot of women, because every single word out of her mouth is something that we've either been told by somebody else or we've said to ourselves. And then at the very end, as you're getting the culmination of the entire motif of using What Was I Made For throughout the score, and then you get the actual song at the end, and it's this really gorgeous moment, and you're able just to sit in it. And I was sobbing like a little toddler. I just was a puddle. And I felt okay in being a puddle in the theater because I was not the only one. That theater was full, and everybody else in that theater was crying too.
Yeah. I will say it's a really good job of taking... this is like the second time somebody has taken a toy product and like made a really decent film out of it. The first time being Lego Movie. And again, putting some... Not just... they could have... if it was a lesser director... They could have just, straight up done live action adaptation of really any of the Barbie movies that have come out over the past 20 years or so.
That's right.
And it probably would have been fine. But because they got a director whose name is blanking.
Greta
Gerwig. Because, they got somebody as into film as she is and saw this and used it more as just a vessel to tell a really good story, with the object being the Barbie doll in general, and being able to touch upon a whole bunch of stuff. It goes to show you can take pretty much any property and make a really good film out of it if you get the right directors and writers to do it. You can pretty much do that with any toy line, which is why after when the trailers were coming out, I remember there was a lot of, really? They're going to make a movie about Barbie? I was just like, well, we'll see. I kind of had high hopes because of Greta Gerwig's name attached to it. But, nowadays, if hopefully Hollywood learns a good lesson and decides whenever they want to do, because I know they want to do a whole bunch of toy-based movies, especially after this and the Lego movies have done so well. So whenever they do decide to do, I don't know, He-Man or really any Hot Wheels, whatever you want to pick, Cabbage Patch Dolls, they find somebody that does have a history of the toy, but also is really into good films in general. Then we'll get, the next Barbie, the next Lego movie.
Also, this is one of the few movies that has come out and done really well that was not made for the male gaze.
It wasn't.
It wasn't. It's one of the few movies that has blown up that really was made by women, for women.
It doesn't mean that
men can't enjoy it, but
because I very much enjoy the film.
But it meant that there wasn't a lot of really awkward sex jokes for no reason.
Yeah.
Or having somebody walking around in the skimpiest thing you can find just so that you can get guys to watch the movie.
Yeah. Even though they do have a funny sex joke.
They do have them in there, but it's not every other word. It's not meant to just cater to guys so that they can go see a movie with their girlfriend that the girlfriend might want to actually see.
Yeah. Okay. And the next movie, probably one of the classics. I'm going to say this first. People keep saying, "Oh, this movie cannot be made today." I'm like, this film could definitely be made today. Come on.
Some of the jokes could not be in it, though.
Some of the jokes couldn't really be in it, but I mean, the entire movie could easily be made today. We're talking about Blazing Saddles. It's a classic. It's a Mel Brooks classic movie. I believe he was already writing this at the time that he was directing. Mel Brooks was directing Young Frankenstein. or it was.
They're close together.
They're close together. So, yeah. So it's Mel Brooks. He's got the same type of comedy style in all his films, pretty much from the I think 60s and 70s all the way up through. It kind of gets he dips off in the 90s there, but definitely this was like Mel's golden era here. So this is just like, it's always included in any of those box collections, and it's a brilliant film. Fun, great film, a lot of quotable lines. Can't really say them on here, but yeah. And your thoughts?
See, I think if we're doing a true remake of it, it could not be remade today. If you're doing an update, a reimagining, that could be done. But yeah, I love this movie. I saw it for the first time at my grandparents' house. That was a mistake.
Oh no.
Luckily did not get caught, because my grandma would have had some words for me.
And then last two films we're going to touch upon here is the Blue Collar Comedy Tours. So I did not grow up with any of these comedic actors outside of, I guess, Larry the Cable Guy for Cars. But I've never been a fan of his type of humor, even in the Cars movie. So I was introduced to these when I started dating my wife. And they're fine. I guess I enjoy Jeff Foxworthy and Ron White's the most. Bill Engvall has a couple of good jokes in there as well. I just don't really care for Larry the Cable Guy. These are more up your alley, so you go ahead.
So before I get into this, my mom's family is from the tiniest little town in Mississippi. So we're all redneck to some degree, which makes my husband now redneck by association. We grew up on these. I remember really getting into the Bill Engvall and Jeff Foxworthy segments. The Larry the Cable Guy ones I really got into was the Christmas carols that he did in there, where he made them redneck. And then I really enjoyed Ron White's story about when he got arrested for drunk in public. We would quote that all the time, especially at my mom after my uncle's wedding reception. She got a little wild, but it was a wedding reception. It was fine. All the Jeff Foxworthy jokes have always hit with us, especially the "you might be a redneck if," because we could point out a family member who had done every single one of those things. The Bill Engvall ones were always a little bit more relatable as well, because they just made me think of my dad. It's very dad coded. It's very like dad comedy.
And that'll be it for this month's Let's Talk About Movies. As I said, we're just really going to try to keep these at about 30 minutes or so. It's easier on me to edit them. So next month we'll continue with the comedy films, and we'll probably continue with it for a couple months there. So make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy these videos, and definitely will, if there's any movies that we've mentioned in this video or the past videos that you'd like to hear more in depth of, definitely leave a comment, and I will put it on my list to talk about more in the future. And until next time, thank you and have a good day.